Thanks for joining us today, and I'll call the January 11th meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board into order. Let's begin with the roll call of commission members.
Lucretia King, Vice Chair.
Joanna Johnson, Chair.
Dave Hoganson.
Tanya Graywin.
And I think we have Todd on the line.
Todd Goldberg.
Okay. All right. And absent today is Scott and Conrad. The next item is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. All right, motion carried. The next item is to approve the minutes of the December 14 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Anything? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is a public comment period. Oh, see anyone here?
There was no sign up for public comment.
Okay, thank you. The next item was questions from the community members, which I don't think we had any this month. I think there'll be some coming down the pike, but I don't think we had any for this month. You didn't hear of any either, right? No. Okay, next item on the agenda is police department updates from Chief Zabowski.
Good evening, Board. A couple things. This last week, you may have seen we presented a facilities management plan to the Commission to address some current long-term facility needs for the department. The full report will probably be out in a couple weeks and available to the public as well. That's just going to be part of a long-term process working with city admin and the Commission on those particular issues. We also are in the midst of planning our DC trip during National Law Enforcement Week to pay tribute and honor Officer Jake Wooleen, whose name will be added to the National Law Enforcement Memorial's wall during that National Police Week. That's in process, and we have a new academy starting next week, January 22nd, so a little more than a week. Still finalizing candidates, probably 15 to 16 in the class. And so we're pretty excited about that. And I think that's it for current updates. A lot of stuff. It's a cold, slow January, but there's a lot of internal things going on. So a lot of good stuff happening.
Okay, that's good to hear. Next item on the agenda is our Fargo Police Department K-9 presentation. This will be, is this Sergeant Sam Bowman? Okay.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm Sergeant Sam Bowman. I've been with the Fargo PD since 2010. I've been a K-9 handler since 2017, and I've been a sergeant and overseeing the K-9 unit since 2020. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of our K-9 unit that we have at the Fargo PD. We have 5 handler and dog teams. 3 of those are what are called dual purpose teams, meaning they're trained to do more than one discipline. 3 of those are patrol and narcotics detection. Patrol is tracking, building searches, area searches, handler protection, apprehension, those sorts of things. And then obviously narcotics detection is the location of hidden narcotics. That's what we are most commonly used for. We have 1 single purpose narcotics detection team, which is currently assigned to the Cass County Drug Task Force with a detective, and 1 single purpose explosives, or sorry, that should say dual purpose explosives detection team that's also patrol trained as well. Why do we use dogs? Excuse me. Number one, they're a fantastic locating tool. Dogs have just an insane sense of smell. It's still impressive to me after working with them every day that some of the things that they can do and find for us. In the fight against drugs, especially fentanyl, drugs are very easy to hide because they can be very small. So any tool that we can use to help find them, we should use, and dogs is probably the best way to find them. Also on the patrol side, we can safely locate and apprehend people, which keeps officers in the community protected. And third, we use them for community engagement. I don't know too many people that absolutely hate dogs. They're a great bridge into the community. When we're at events, people see the dog, they come up to us, ask questions, pet the dog, and we get to share what they can do and how they help us. So maybe some people that wouldn't normally approach an officer at an event, the dog is that nice connection with them. Like I mentioned, the highest uses that we have is for narcotics detection. Our dogs can detect marijuana, methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, crack, cocaine, mushrooms, and fentanyl, which is new to us. We deployed 297 times in 2023 to detect narcotics. We help out a lot of partners. It's not just the Fargo Police Department. We help out some federal partners, the Postal Inspector's Office, drug task forces, DEA, our neighboring agencies. So those deployment numbers are not just for the Fargo Police Department. We help out our neighbors as well. Some quick stats of all of the drugs recovered via a canine in 2023. 133 pounds of marijuana, 1,500-ish THC products, 17.5 pounds of methamphetamine, 107 grams of heroin, about 2 pounds of cocaine, 23,000 fentanyl pills, that's a lot. $243,000 of currency was seized related to drug trafficking, and 329 pieces of paraphernalia. As I mentioned, the fentanyl pills is something new to our unit. It's new to the industry of police canine. Obviously, it's very dangerous to handle fentanyl and to be around fentanyl, so we're very careful on how we use the dogs to detect that. A lot of that is with our partners investigating drugs through the mail, so a lot of it is already packaged up. And dogs also can benefit from Narcan. So all of our handlers have Narcan with for themselves and for the dog as well. Explosives detection. We did not have explosives detection prior to 2020. Our first detection dog, Toby, is pictured right there. He was purchased in a partnership with the Fargo Dome. The Fargo Dome was hiring a outside contractor about 10 to 12 times a year at about $700 a time anytime an act came in, and they would require, most big acts require an explosive sweep prior to the talent getting there. So it was cheaper for the Fargo Dome to purchase an explosives detection dog instead of hiring one every single time. Police dog costs about $15,000 trained. So at $700 a time, 10 to 12 times a year, after a couple years, it's cheaper to just purchase one. So the Fargo Dome purchased Canine Toby. He's assigned to an officer with the Fargo Police Department, and he's dual purpose trained in patrol work and explosives detection. Something that's extremely uncommon for an explosives dog in a law enforcement field is to actually find a live explosives in the wild, per se. We obviously train twice a month at a minimum, and we have training aids on hand for that, but most explosives dogs go through their career and never find a live explosives device. Toby in 2023 found 2. Both were on July 14th, associated with that investigation. So most have 0 in their career. Toby had 2 in 1 day. Because of that, that's Betsy Miller. She is Toby's handler. She's received some awards at the national level through the United States Police Canine Association for her work on July 14th. Primarily, Toby and Officer Miller do facility sweeps at the Fargo Dome or courthouses. We've done some here. Another tool that's been very instrumental for us is locating spent shell casings at shooting scenes. So they obviously have a small amount of explosive in them, so, how they function, and Toby can find them. At a shooting last summer, it was actually a homicide last summer on 9th Avenue. Toby was used to locate shell casings in a huge grass field. It would have taken officers crawling around on their hands and knees to find them, and he found them in a matter of a few minutes. That's one of the big reasons we use dogs, is just the speed at which they can search areas. They're a huge force multiplier for us as far as time goes. Patrol canines, as I said, we have 4 of them trained in patrol work. That's tracking, building searches, area searches, article searches. Which article searches is evidence that's been held by a person, has human scent on it, and then dropped. So we've had really good success identifying suspects. For example, myself and my dog tracked a robber from a gas station a few years ago. While he was running from the robbery, he dropped his hat, which we located. That hat went for DNA testing, identified the suspect, and he was eventually held accountable for that robbery. So it's not just finding the guy at the end of the track. A lot of it is evidence recovery as well. Our patrol dogs are trained to apprehend suspects and also protect the handler as well. We deployed 93 total times in 2023 for patrol work and had 4 physical apprehensions, meaning the dog bit 4 people. All of those were found to be within policy. What's really hard to measure in that 93 is the deterrence factor. The dog can be a great deterrence. We're required by law and policy to give loud verbal announcements before we use a dog, and we have to give the individual an opportunity to surrender, and a lot of the times they do. So that's a great use for us. It keeps everybody safe. We don't have to go running off into the dark looking for people, and if we can get them to just give up. So there are many advantages of using dogs for patrol work. We can send the dog out away from us towards the suspect from behind cover. We don't have to step out into danger. A police dog is the only use of force tool that once it's sent out, it can be stopped. A bullet can't be stopped, a taser can't be stopped. None of our less lethal launchers can be turned off. Once you press that trigger, you can't take it back. With a dog, you can. We have to certify nationally every year, and that's one of the things that it requires, is you have to send your dog to apprehend a guy in a big puffy bite suit, and once they're almost there, you have to stop the dog and bring them back to you, and they can't make any contact with the decoy. The dog cannot be taken away from an officer and used against us. It can warn us of hidden people in danger, and as I mentioned, it's a huge de-escalation tactic. We've had many arrestees or suspects tell us that they gave up because they didn't want to come in contact with the dog. So all use of force policy that we have applies to canine apprehensions. It has to be a felony involving force or weapons or a burglary. and then other factors such as perceived level of resistance, if the person is hiding or fleeing, or things like that. We can't and would not just use a dog to run after an underage minor that was running after us or running away from us that didn't want to get a ticket for underage drinking. We would never do that. So it is a higher level of force, and we have really good policy. It fits with all of the national best practices. As I mentioned, we certify nationally every year. We have to certify in the patrol work and the detection work separately. So we go to events that have non-biased judges that aren't involved in our agency at all, don't know us. They don't really have a dog in the fight, pardon the pun, whether we pass or not. And they put us through various tests, and we have to certify. If our dogs do not certify, they don't work in that discipline until they have certified. And then to maintain that certification, best practice and policy requires a minimum of 16 hours of training per month to maintain that certification. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple things. When one of the dogs apprehends someone, I mean, how do they apprehend that person? Are they like biting their clothes or the person, or how are they apprehending?
They do bite them on usually an extremity, like most of the time an arm, and they're trained to do, we just call it a bite and hold. They're grabbing onto them with their mouth and holding them. It's not, I think you would be surprised that the level of injury is not very high most of the time. And then another thing that we have to certify with is we have to have the dog let go at our testing using only our voice. We have to be at least 10 feet away from the dog during the test when we have them release the person. So everything is very controlled. The most important thing that we train at our training days and our certifications is obedience. We can't have a dog that doesn't listen. They do have a mind of their own. It's not as simple as I push this button on my phone and it does the same thing every single time. They have a brain, they have emotions, they can have bad days, just like human employees can. So we spend a lot of time on obedience, and we have to know that if we're gonna apprehend someone, we need to know that we're going to be able to get the dog off. And I can confidently say that that is not an issue for us.
I have another question. I know this one time, interacting with police, not here in Fargo, but like where they were like, oh, we have a dog, can we sniff your car or whatever, just random, like pulled over.
Sure.
And I was like, sure, whatever. But I mean, they ask permission, but is that something in policing? Are you is that a consent?
Sure, it
Sometimes,
certainly
or-
can be done under consent.
Right.
That is typically not how we do it. Usually when an officer requests one of us to come to their stop to sniff a car that they have stopped, the vast majority of the time that's done after they've established reasonable suspicion that there's narcotic activity going on. So it's not just willy-nilly, I've got this car stopped, I'm kind of bored, I'd like to have the dog come over.
Right.
I can't really think of a time where I've done that.
Right.
That's usually always done after they've articulated facts to us that this is why I think this person has narcotics in their car. So we certainly could do it under consent, but I don't know. I don't know of a time where we've done that.
Okay.
We may already have the facts that we would need to articulate, and we may ask consent with kind of those facts in our back pocket. But if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Well, a comment too, as far as the grab and hold.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little familiar with canines, and I know they're really adept at controlling, anything from picking up a small puppy without hurting it.
Right.
So I hear you. When one of the dogs detects a narcotic, what's the reaction of the animal, and is it always the same?
All of ours are the same. There's two main categories in our industry. The most common is what's called passive alert, which is what all of our dogs are, which means they stop. And they usually sit down or lay down. So that through the training process, they're imprinted on whatever odors they're imprinted on, whether it's narcotics or explosives, and they're trained to get first as close as they physically can to the source of the odor. It helps us find it. And then they stop. And most of them sit or lay down. Some of them freeze. Some of the pointing breeds will just freeze at it. But our dogs sit or lay down. Something that's kind of going out of favor in the industry would be called aggressive alert, where the dog paws at the source of the odor or bites at it. That's not very popular anymore because it damages property. We don't want to damage people's property if we don't need to, and so it's way, way, way more common to be passive alert now. So they just stop. Our dogs are moving all the time, so I always tell people just pay attention when they stop. That's what's important.
Okay. And I thought you had mentioned that when it's a dog is used for explosives detection, a lot of times they'll never, through their career, encounter that.
Right.
And so when they go through their annual certification, are they continually trained so they remember that, or how does
Yes.
that work?
So we have training aids at our department for both narcotics and explosives. So we have about 21 different explosives odor, real live explosive products kept safely, obviously, at our police station. And we have narcotics kept at our police station as well that's tracked every time it goes in and out of a safe. And that's what we train with. So while most explosives dogs will not find a explosive during their career, they're finding them all the time at training and at certification because we keep them on hand.
Okay.
Could you maybe elaborate a little on how you would train a dog to, say, sniff out?
Yeah. Everything we do in canine is a game to the dog. We're not picking anything. We're not picking dogs that are mean. Back, I think when I was probably a kid and before then, the industry used to find the biggest, meanest dog they could and a handler that was just dumb enough to take the dog. Now we need dogs that are social, that we can bring into kindergarten classes and kids can accidentally step on their tails and pull on their ears and nothing bad happens. We do that all the time. So everything that we're doing with our dog in their mind is a game, and they're rewarded for winning the game. So scent detection basically is hide their reward. So our dogs get paid with a ball or a rubber pipe after they find what they're trying to find. So we take some methamphetamine and their toy and we put it in a box. And we bring them up to it, they sniff the box, they're sniffing the meth and their toy. We tell them to sit after they've sniffed it, and as soon as they sit, we open the box and they stick their head in and grab their toy. And we do that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and we add more and more and more boxes, so to speak. So they have to start checking blank boxes first. And then eventually the toy is not in the box anymore. It's just the target odor. And so they learn very quickly that when I smell this, I sit down, I get my toy. So eventually the toy comes out and is just held by the handler, and when they sit down, we throw it to them. So it takes a long time, but in 30 seconds, that's how we do it.
Okay.
Do we have anybody in the department that can certify and train the dogs, like initially?
Sure. So we have two of our handlers. I'm one of them, and Officer Brad Cernick. We're both certified as judges to certify dogs. So we will go to other events where we're not certifying ourselves and act as judges. We don't have any certified trainers. All of our initial training is done by outside vendors. So 3 of our dogs were purchased by a vendor, and their initial training was done in Pennsylvania at Shallow Creek Kennels. And 2 of the other 2 were purchased by vendors in Minnesota, and the initial training was done there, and the handler training.
And would it be typical to use a dog, again, I'll use the explosives detection, would it be typical to just walk through the Red River Valley Fair or the Downtown Street Fair, just to casually just walking through?
Typically, we do explosive sweeps when there's no citizens there.
Okay.
Because we got to remember, if the dog finds something, we trust them, right? So that might be some sort of a device. So a lot of the public events, without giving away too much of the family recipe, we've brought our dog through there first. Like I said, most big names at the Dome, our explosives dog has been through there first. Not every single seat, not every square inch of the facility, but the important entrance and egress points where the talent is going to be, that sort of thing. We have not done a lot while an event is already going. It's usually done beforehand.
I don't know if this might be more general, like in general, maybe the question is, but I know that, like you said, that they can apprehend people, so there's still a danger, right, to them. What's the incidence? How often is there, danger to the dog, like dogs sustaining injuries
Sure.
on the job?
So all of our patrol dogs have bullet and stab resistant vests that they can wear as well. They don't wear them all the time because the dogs get really warm wearing them. Those have all been donated. There's always a risk anytime we're apprehending a suspect. We have a phrase, we don't send dogs to their death. If we know that someone is holed up, barricaded in a room with a gun, that's not a situation where we would just send in our dog. But like any other arrest situation, we take the knowledge that we have and we weigh that against the tools that we have available to us. We have not had a dog injured during an apprehension that I'm aware of in our time, beyond just maybe some scrapes or something. But it's also a crime in North Dakota to kill or injure a police dog. So sometimes the suspects will hit or kick or try and punch the dog to get them to let go. That's an extra charge for them as well.
With fentanyl, my guess is that adds an extra level of danger to the dog, and so since that's all exploded, that's bad. The use of that has that required to take extra precautions to protect the dogs?
Yes. So when we suspect that we're looking for fentanyl, most of the time that's in a setting where we believe it's packaged. We would not go into, say, an apartment or a residence while we're conducting a search warrant and just let the dog go loose if we suspect fentanyl is involved, because it may just be laying out on the table. The dogs don't know that it can hurt them, and they're trained to get as close as they can to it before they sit down and alert and show us that they found something. So if we suspect fentanyl is at play, we wouldn't just cut the dog loose, and we'd only use them, say, like we think a package coming in the mail has fentanyl in it. That would be pretty safe for the dogs, and we do that all the time. And we have Narcan present with all our officers all the time that we're out. So, and we have it in our training kit as well for the dogs.
going to try to ask this the right way. I know that in some, I don't know if it's cultures or just in some populations, dogs can be people can be very resistant to having dogs around. And you mentioned going into like kindergarten classes and
Yeah.
some social events. Are there other things that you do to help some like new Americans and other populations to be more, I guess, comfortable?
Sure. So anytime we go into a school, that's always scheduled ahead of time, and the teachers always reach out to guardians and parents and say, hey, we're going to have a dog in class. It's a good heads up. Some kids are allergic to dogs. Some kids are terrified of dogs. Some cultures don't think highly of dogs or aren't used to dogs or don't like having them around. When I was a kid, I was terrified of dogs. So we always give people the heads up. Typically when we're at an event, we are stationary. We're not just meandering around in the crowd. We usually have a booth set up. That way, if people don't really care for us, care for dogs, don't really want to be around dogs, they can just move on. So our dogs are very social, but we also have to understand what they're capable of. When we're in public, I mean, we're not just letting the dog run around in the crowd and jump up on people. It's always a controlled thing.
But it would be appropriate, like if a kid were at an event like that, to come up to want to pet the dog.
Yep.
Right. I'm just thinking in terms of, if people have dogs as support animals, that it's not appropriate to do that. So
Right.
just making that
Yeah, if we're at the downtown community picnic that we have, that's why we're there,
Right.
is to meet the public, and that would be totally fine. If we're out working and we're busy and someone wants to pet the dog, we just explain that, hey, when we're done, I'll come over and we can talk.
Are there various breeds that are preferred?
Yeah, all of our dogs are Belgian Malinois. One of them is a Belgian Malinois German Shepherd mix. Kilo, our single-purpose drug dog, is a mix. Malinois are fantastic working dogs. I kind of compare them, if a German Shepherd is a Cadillac, Belgian Malinois is a Ferrari. They're both nice cars. They're just built for different things. Malinois are very fast. They're a little smaller. Health-wise, I think the research shows they hold up a little bit better than German Shepherds. Nothing wrong with German Shepherds, but I think these are just better. For single-purpose work, primarily detection work, we see a lot in canine of German Shorthair Pointers, Labs, retrieving breeds, even smaller dogs like a Springer Spaniel. Anything that loves to run and sniff, we will take.
Okay. And is the program, the canine program with the Fargo Police, you guys have your dogs, and do you look to expand that, or do you feel like you have enough, or
We could
too
use
many
more. There's a couple different things. We could use more. We don't have one on all of the time. Most of the time we do. We have almost 24-hour coverage with a dog working. The other area that's really growing in canine that is new is like emotional support or comfort dogs. We're researching that right now. West Fargo does that, and it's definitely growing in popularity, and I think it's a good thing. We're looking into that right now as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this, but maybe I am, but I'll ask anyway. So away from work, do the handlers act as the dog's owner? They go home with them, live with them, take care of them at home?
Yes, so the dog is owned by the city of Fargo. They are assigned to us. We take them home with us. Dogs have different personalities. Some dogs do better in a house with people around than others. None of ours are vicious or bad or anything. My dog in particular is just very active. So he at home, he's not out unsupervised. We've got dogs that I get pictures sent to me on their days off of they're curled up on the couch watching a movie with the family. So yeah, they're with us all the time. It's a huge time commitment for the handler and the family. If we're not home or out of town, we need to arrange for it to be cared for. We help each other out. The 5 of us will watch each other's dogs while we're out of town. But yeah, they come home with us when they retire. Typically, the handler has the option to purchase the dog from the city for $1. So that's what we've always done in the past. But they are owned by the city.
And how long do you keep a canine in work? You know, when do they retire?
We like to get 8 to 10 years out of them. So we usually purchase them when they're about a year and a half old. We like to see them work for 8 to 10 years. They pay for themselves really quickly. I mean, you saw the cash seizure numbers. If they're $15,000 a piece, they're a resource that's paid for almost right away. But we'd like to get 8 to 10 years out of them.
How do the officers that are interested in becoming canine handlers, how do they go about? Do you go to the academy and meet with them, or how does that process
We do a block of instruction at the academy. We don't specifically hire officers to be canine handlers. So, in my introduction, I started with the PD in 2010. It was always an interest of mine. So typically how the progression goes is an officer meets with a handler and says that they're interested, and we start them off at coming to our training days and observing, helping out with some basic exercises, maybe helping out with feedings or check-ins if the handler's out of town. And then you graduate after some training to kind of being in the bite suit and doing some of the more hands-on things. And just gaining experience that way, and just it's a great way for people to learn how much of a time commitment it is. When you leave work on your days off, it's not like your duty bag and your CSI camera case that you can just put in your locker and come back after your days off and grab your stuff and go back to work. We literally take our work home with us all the time, and we have to always be thinking about the dog. So that's one of the things that we really try and impress on people is this is all the time. You're not going to be able to disappear from work for a week and not think about work at all until this dog retires. So that's the progression is people usually approach us and say, hey, I'm interested. That's how I did it. That's how all the other handlers did it is just kind of an internal mentoring thing. And then we have an application process, selection process when we have an opening.
once you're a handler then and you have been assigned a dog, that's your dog?
That's your
There's-
dog. Yep, we don't share them. We don't assign a dog to 2 different people at the same time. We have had a handler in the past change their mind after having a dog for about a year, and that dog can be reassigned to someone else. That's a big cost benefit decision because the training is about $6,000 to $8,000 to train the handler. So if a dog is in the second half of its career, that doesn't make sense so much financially to reassign a dog to somebody, but it can be done.
So in that situation, the dog may retire.
Yes. But none of our handlers, I think you'll have to pry the leash out of their hands. When we start having those retirement decisions, it gets pretty tough because usually it's one and done. Then it's not just that their dog is done, they're not a handler anymore. So people usually want to keep, this is not something that people usually want to stop doing. Once they're in, they want to, they know how hard they had to work to get it, and they want to stay there as long as they can.
They get pretty attached to them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Todd, did you have any questions? Todd, you're on the,
I'm actually good.
okay,
Thank you.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
for the
thank you.
presentation.
Yeah. Right. I think that is our order of business on the agenda. One thing that we wanted to mention, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is having a Dreamers Unite Monday, January 15th at the Fargo Theater on Broadway at 6:30. Right, this is the poster for that. So we just want to invite people out to be part of that in the community. And
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is the MLK celebration. We normally have it every year, and we had it last year. And it's going to be Monday at 6:30. So just come on out and just have a good time. So it goes from 6:30, I think, to 8:30. Yeah.
Is there any cost associated?
No, it's free. It's free of charge. And we want all of Fargo to come out and just enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. All right, any other business? That's it?
That's it.
All right. Well, hearing none, the meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board stands adjourned. And our next meeting is set for February 8th. And that's 5 p.m. here. And then the following week, we will have the board members have the brown bag on the 15th. All right. Thank you. That concludes the meeting is closed. Thank you.